All right, and we're live. All right, and we're live.
Hello.
Hello.
Are we good to go?
I believe we are. I'm checking on Twitch, and we're live.
Okay, awesome stuff. All right. Okay, well, I'll jump straight into the presentation then, shall I?
All right.
Okay, cool. Hello, everybody. My name is Sam Larsen-Disney. I am a full-time software engineer. I work at a company called Amplitude right now, which is an analytics company based out of the US. And I'm here today to talk to you about my hackathon experience and give you some tips and tricks that might help you rise that little bit higher in terms of projects and hopefully elevate your hack just a little bit. I'm going to be talking about my journey to $20,000 in hackathon prize money. I'm going to show you some of the projects I've worked on, some of the lessons I've learned, and we've got plenty to get through. So let's jump straight in. I don't know how many people are watching the stream, but this is not an ordinary presentation. If you want to play along, you can navigate to follow.sld.codes. And this deck is all interactive. We've got Q&As and all sorts of stuff in here. So I'm going to give you 20 seconds to navigate to this link, and then we'll jump straight in. Okay, I don't see many of you here, but we'll give it a go anyway. Cool. So firstly, quick tour of this UI. If you're following along, you can pick your theme up in the top corner and change it to whatever you fancy. You can go full screen on the right. You can see how many people are following you around, and you can react if you are enjoying what you're watching. I wanted to start with this picture. This is one of my favorite pictures. This is the moment I first got addicted to hackathons. The look of bewilderment on my face as I was handed an Xbox. The reaction would have been even bigger had I known where there was a massive tangent I was about to take in my career as a result of what had just happened. I thought I would first start by asking the question, have you attended a hackathon before? If you're here and you want to answer the poll, that'd be cool. See some numbers come in, get a feel for how experienced the audience is. Okay, so I'm seeing a few newbies, a couple of experts, and a couple of once or twices. That's great. Good mix of people in the room. Good to see. So flashback time. The year is 2017. I was in my third year of university, and I was studying computer science with artificial intelligence. And to be honest, I actually wasn't really enjoying it. It was very mathsy, and I was bored. And my best mate, Jonathan, saw my boredom and suggested that I should participate in a hackathon. My university ran a hackathon called Hack Kings, and together with Johnny and Jordan, who's pictured there, we're both looking a bit tired, we decided to enter. And we stayed up all night building a prototype of an app called Beach Street. And unfortunately, this is the only picture I have of the app, which you can see there in the background. I look very blurry, but Beach Street takes your current location and attempts to play music related to where you are. This is the only picture I have of the app, and I'm really sorry about that, but hopefully you can kind of see the UI. So it's got a map at the top, and it's got a little play button at the bottom, where you kind of like a Spotify album cover work and title. And you can see my excitement as the location Astley Avenue played Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up. So I was super thrilled about that. And then we did something stupid. So having stayed up all night, we were kind of shattered. We pitched the app to the judges, and we hadn't finished all the features that we wanted. We felt like it didn't look as good as it could have. And in its incomplete state, we weren't going to win anything. So, like fools, we decided to leave early. Big mistake. 1 hour later, our phones are blowing up. Every member of the hackathon organizing committee was trying to get hold of us. They wanted us to present in the final. And this leads me on to the very first lesson. The idea is the hack, not the code. Regardless of the state of your code, as long as you can convey your idea through it, your hack is good enough. All the extra bells and whistles like styling, animations, graphics, branding can all go away. If you can convey your idea well, you're doing a good enough job. And this is where the story kind of takes a turn into a redemption story. You see, fast forward a couple of months, and on a trip to Brighton, we were still kicking ourselves. Johnny turns to me and says, I think we should try this hackathon thing again. And it just so happened that the largest student-run hackathon, IC Hack, was happening at Imperial College a couple of weeks after this date. And Johnny and I managed to get some last-minute tickets and vowed that this time we were staying until the end. I don't know if you're familiar, but there is a large amount of rivalry between the London universities. And this time we wouldn't be competing on home turf, we would be an enemy university. And this was immediately noticeable when Johnny and I showed up and tried to find two teammates. It was like that moment when you're the last person to be picked for a sports team. No one wanted us, partially due to our lack of skill and partially because of our university choice. And we ended up forming a team with the only two who were left. However, this ended up being quite a good thing because they had front-end experience where we had none. And that leads us on to lesson number 2. A good team is a varied one. A hackathon team has its best chance of success when comprised of a whole host of different roles and skill levels. How your team is constructed can drastically change your team's abilities and the kinds of projects you can tackle. People often forget this when they're thrown into a room, whether that's in person or virtual, in a room full of strangers. They huddle with the people they know who have the same skill set. So I would encourage you to branch out and talk to people you might not have met and find those alternate skills to your own. With a fair amount of determination, the team stayed up all night. It turned out that we finished the back end early, and I was asked by one of my newfound teammates to help with the front end. This was my first exposure to the world of front-end development. And I was immediately hooked, but incredibly inexperienced. So I was asking for help left, right, and center. And by some miracle, even at 2 in the morning, I was getting help from people. And who knows if I'd still be in front-end without this experience today. The brief for this particular hackathon was to use Microsoft APIs in an interesting way. We settled on their image recognition, which was actually quite new at the time. Their APIs had just been released. They've now been out for four or so years. And we built a little project called Spidentify. Many teams were also using the image recognition, but we did something that we thought was a little bit different. We created multiple image recognition models and then fed one into another. It's common for people to turn up to the hack with an app idea without working out if it actually fits the brief. They try and bend it to match the brief, but it always puts you at a disadvantage. If you're in it to win it, wait until you have the brief in your hands to generate ideas. And make sure that the brief shines through your idea. So here's a little demo of Spidentify. So Spidentify is an app that takes a photo of a snake or a spider and attempts to classify it. We envisioned people using this in the rainforest after being bitten by something nasty. Once the photo was taken and the species was identified, it would work out whether you were going to die or not. And if you were, it would direct you to the nearest hospital. Now, a funny fact here is that regardless of what you give it, it would either identify it as a snake or a spider. So during the shortlist demo, we gave it a picture of Donald Trump. And when he came out as a snake, the auditorium burst into laughter. Now, in this case, we chose to show the audience how the hack was broken. But every hackathon project I have worked on has involved cutting corners. And that's okay. A small amount of faking it can sometimes save you a great deal of stress and also help you solidify your idea with the judges. Also, if you can use the brokenness of your application to provide some humor, humor does a wonderful thing with audiences and judges, and it will help them like your idea. We ended up taking first place at this hack, and I left with more than just an Xbox. I'd found some new mates, but I'd also found a new passion for front-end development. I immediately contacted my graduate scheme coordinator and said I wanted to do front-end in my role. And as my studies came to a close, I thought, most events I was aware of were geared towards students, and I no longer was one. Luckily, I was wrong. Fun fact, graduation was the last time I wore a suit. But I know that this is a student event, and I think it's important that you guys know that just because you won't be students forever doesn't mean that you can't keep doing hackathons. There are tons out there. You just need to know where to look. So every non-pandemic year since, I've gone back to ICHack as a sponsor and mentor, and this is where two great ideas were sparked. The first was the Hackathon Survival Guide. More on this fabled thing later. And the second was actually the idea for this presentation software. And this started with a focus on the content. You see, at every student hackathon, there is always a horde of sponsors trying to grab your attention. They normally get a 5-minute, 10-minute slot at an opening ceremony to try and sell you their grad schemes, internships, jobs. And they would have had slides with hundreds of lines of text on each one that no one would ever read, sending the students to sleep before the hack had even started. I wanted to challenge that, so I tried to codify the presentation experience into a hackathon project. Keep it simple and keep it focused on their learning. I figured that by doing so, I would potentially get American Express, who was my employer at the time, more engagement with the right kind of students. And instead of speaking about graduate schemes, I gave talks like the one you see on the screen about elevating your hack, in which I gave away some of the tips and tricks in this deck, as well as a few more. Yearly applications from Imperial College went up 200% in 3 months, and American Express decided to capitalize on this success and send me to every hackathon up and down the country, and even a couple abroad. And a couple of job shifts later, the world locked down. And during lockdown 1.0, I held my own hackathon with one attendee, me. And the brief was to improve on PowerPoint. You see, me and PowerPoint are not friends. In fact, I would go so far as to say I hate it. I strive for pixel perfection in my slide decks, and using drag and drop is not the best way to get it. I also don't need all the extra bits and bobs that PowerPoint gives you. I prefer clear and concise slides that get the point across big and bold. So I have a question. Which is older, Michael Jackson's Thriller album or PowerPoint? Cast your votes now. What have we got? Okay, a little bit of a mix of opinion. It's a trick question. So they are the same age, and they were both released in 1987. It's definitely withstood the test of time, but there must be something out there that's better for developers. So I started looking for an alternative. And I found that alternative in something called MDX. MDX is Markdown and JSX thrown together. You've used JSX before if you've ever played with front-end development and used React. But it's an awesome combination that allows you to create Markdown content with interactive charts, animations, alerts, etc., etc. You can throw it all in. So that's what this deck is built with. And then what I do is I use this tech to create deployable site pages. So every single one of these slides that we're viewing now together are individual slides of the presentation. And we can use those to create a deployable version of this presentation, which means no matter where you are in the world, you can go to this website and see these slides, and they'll be up forever. And that's great because, you know, if you give a presentation and your audience wants to keep track of the slides, you can throw it up there and then they can access them whenever they want. But it's still not live. You see, someone can't follow along with me as I present. And the idea came to me for that when I was trying to share my screen, a presentation that I'd done at home during lockdown. And I lived in a house with very weak internet. So I was screen sharing, and what my audience was seeing was a pixelated mess. They weren't seeing my slides in the nice, clear way that I wanted them to be presented. And I'm there thinking to myself, my slides are already deployed. Why don't I just share the link and let the audience follow along as I present? And this is achieved with something called sockets. If you are looking for a little bit of a challenge, sockets are a really interesting thing to maybe consider during this hackathon. And what sockets allow you to do is set up a bi-directional communication channel between a client and a server. And it's real time. So unlike REST, where you maybe make a request once and get a response, this is continuous and the channel remains open. If you've ever ordered food or tracked a parcel online and watched as the order status changed without you refreshing the page, that was done with sockets. And that's exactly what you're seeing implemented here. I then took it a little bit further and a little bit more experimental. And I dabbled in making this presentation software gesture controlled. And this demo is a little bit long, but I definitely think it's worth the wait. So you can see that on the left, I've got my webcam, and below that, I'm using a package called PoseNet to track where my skeleton is. And as you can see, when I gesture left or right, my wrists are causing it to, it's tracking my wrists. And if it sees them pass a certain threshold, it sets the presentation forward or backward. So, you know, I like to think that front end is a place where you can do whatever you want, whatever you can think about, and you have an idea for in your head, you can probably do it, as long as you're not trying to invade someone's privacy or pull stuff from their local machine. So this kind of stuff can be really fun to kind of play with. If PoseNet is definitely worth a look if you're trying something super experimental for this hackathon. And with this live presentation feature now enabled, my own personal little hackathon was complete. I was still in lockdown though, and with lockdown seemingly never ending, I was looking for another project to sink my teeth into. Hackathons are an addiction for me, and I mean it. So you see, the reason for me participating in hackathons has changed over the last couple of years. As a student and graduate, it was all about learning, and now I use them primarily for escape. In your day jobs, it's impossible to reach your full creative potential all of the time. As engineers, we might be slowed down by politics, design constraints, legal requirements, test code coverage, logic that just won't work, bugs, other teams, etc., the list goes on. And these feelings felt amplified by lockdown. You see, for me, hackathons provide a way to get out of those situations and flex those creative muscles. Remind yourself that when there's nothing in the way, you can be a creative machine. And if you want to participate in a hackathon, then there's no better place to look than devpost.com. I've completed plenty of hacks through the platform, and I thought I would talk about one of these today. Hack for a Sustainable Future was a hackathon hosted by Esri. And Esri is a company that focuses on geography and maps and geospatial analysis. And this was an opportunity for me to participate in a hackathon, but also help the planet. I was immediately sold. And I got stuck in with a good mate and software engineer friend, Yanis. And this hackathon was focused on using ArcGIS platform technology. I don't want to bore you with it too much, but they specialize in 2D and 3D maps and geospatial analysis APIs. Now, what you probably immediately think hearing those terms is that all of the submissions are geography based. But we tried to do something a little bit different. You see, the internet is responsible for nearly 3.7% of all global CO2 emissions. There are currently 4.66 billion active internet users worldwide, which is approximately just under 60% of the global population. And this number is growing every day. And consequently, so is the carbon footprint of the internet. In the next phase of development, we've got to be conscious as developers of the environmental impact of the code that we write and the browsing that we do on the internet. And we've got to take steps, both large and small, as individuals and corporations towards a sustainable future. So while playing around with Lighthouse, which is a great tool in Chrome that will tell you how good your site is from a performance, accessibility, and SEO standpoint, we realized that the amount of data that was being transferred to load our page was quite large. So each visit was sending about 4 megabytes of data. And this might not sound like a lot, but if you have a large quantity of site traffic, megabytes can quickly turn into gigabytes, and every byte sent requires energy, which in turn produces CO2 and other greenhouse gases. But it isn't just us building and visiting sites. There are billions of people and pages on the web. And it was then that we came to the realization that somehow the tool we love the most, the internet, was doing a lot of damage to our planet. And this led us to ask the question, how can we fix it? And so we built a little tool called digitalfootprint.earth, which is still live and you can have a play if you like. And the tool has a couple of different things that it's trying to achieve. Number one, it's trying to identify the impact. So it brings the impact you have when using the internet to life. And to do this, what we do is we create an interactive story using those 3D mapping APIs to help us understand the human impact. So we use mathematics and that mapping technology to visualize the CO2 produced when you navigate to a given web page. Because if I say to you, 10 grams of carbon is produced when you visit a website, you don't know what 10 grams of carbon means. So what we instead do is take that 10 grams of carbon and say, well, you could drive this far if you visit the site 100 times, and really bring it into human terms. The second thing we try and do is reduce the CO2. So we help reduce the impact that sites have on the environment. So we investigate a site's hosting, CDN performance, and size to suggest mechanisms for improvement. And our research during this hack found that the steps we needed towards making the internet greener are simple, and awareness is actually the biggest challenge. And finally, we also set up a way to audit and rank sites. So we provide a way to rank your own site, get a score out of 9 for how green it is, and therefore you can start to compare yourself to other sites. And we also give developers a way to constantly monitor their site's performance, CDN response time, and other request metadata via our scoring system. We then aggregate this all. So we kind of have top level metrics for how different websites are working, and kind of emphasize that a lot of them are not green. This is actually quite funny because you can see this hackathon project was also broken because it says not green on the green area of the donut and green on the red area. But there's a lot more sites that are not green than green, and the performance scores are not great. So there's definitely, every web developer out there should be thinking about this more than they are. We took home $10,000 at this event. We won the top prize. And in the past year, I've entered 6 events and won 5. And I spent a lot of time trying to work out why this was, attempting to distill it. Our hack was not the only well-executed one, but one of the most important lessons I've learned while attending hackathons is that the ideas that win are the ones where teams are personally invested in the outcomes. If you don't have a personal connection, a relation to the idea, it's very hard to sell to the judges that you care about it and that you've really thought it through. If you have a personal connection to the problem statement that you're trying to fix, or a personal connection to the project that you build, it really does shine through. And as I competed more and more, I was realizing that there were more and more common themes that led us to winning. A long time ago, I had a blog post entitled Sam's Hackathon Survival Guide. You probably will not be able to find it anymore. It was filled with tips and tricks for beginners who are new to hacking. And while working on the most recent version of my personal website, I started to implement a new and improved version of this guide spread across multiple posts, right? I wanted to have a collection of Hackathon Survival Guide posts. And I was writing and writing, and it was really like writing a love letter. It was just coming out of me, and I don't know where it came from, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to get that back, but there was a lot of content being produced, and it got really long, book level long. And I investigated the market and saw plenty of books on organizing hackathons, but not any on attending. Having recently completed my first book, I felt uniquely qualified to write this one. So I recruited a good friend and graphic novelist, Irma, and together we created the Hackathon Survival Guide. And it covers everything from the origins and where to find a hack to what to do after the dust settles at an event, and it's fully illustrated throughout. I believe FreyHacks are giving away copies, so I'm hoping that you can nab your hands on one, and if you can't, let me know and we'll sort something out. But I thought that I would touch on some of the relevant content from the book and use some of the illustrations to help me out, spill some of the secrets that might help you during this event. And I wanted to start with timing, because time is your most precious resource during the hackathon. So I have a question for you all, which is, how much time do you think you should spend building the code or building the idea that you're going to present at the hack? Okay, we've got a bit of a mix of opinion. And again, I should, before I go to the next slide, say that this is my opinion. So take it with a grain of salt. But this is how I think you should structure your time when you are considering a hackathon. 10% to idea generation, time to develop and define that winning idea. You might use this time to perform the activities such as, I don't know, Crazy 8, if you've ever heard of that. It's a great way to come up with ideas super quick. But also maybe just testing your idea on your friends, your family, your colleagues, and see what they think about it, because often it's just that next idea that is the best one. And it's really important that you give your team space to find it. 20% to the presentation. Use this time to create the presentation that tells that story of your hackathon journey, right? So how did it start, what the problem statement is, and it will seems like a lot of time, and we'll touch on that in a minute. 5% to your submission, time dedicated to polishing off any additional documentation required to ensure your product qualifies for the hackathon, and 5% for team building, right? Time for icebreakers and any other form of activity that will help you work better as a team. And I really think spending a bit of time doing that can actually make you much more effective as a team. And that should leave you with 60% for build. So yeah, I would be spending about 60% on build. And I suspect some of you may be thinking that that's an awful lot of time to dedicate to your presentation. Consider that when you pitch to the judges, your presentation may be on the screen for the same amount of time as your project demo, if not longer. Also remember that it's not just creating the presentation, but also memorizing what you're going to say, as every extra second you spend practicing your pitch is an extra ounce of confidence that you will convey in that presentation. Second thing I wanted to touch on was idea validation. So one thing that I don't think I see enough of, just in general, is the idea of saying yes and. So when someone is telling you their idea, try and say yes and to build on what they're saying. So saying yes encourages people to internalize ideas and be more receptive to those proposed by others, rather than quickly shutting the idea down. It's always best to initially accept it, enabling the discussion to expand on the idea without hindrance. And saying and helps people steer clear from changing the suggested idea and instead build on what has already been proposed. Because maybe the first idea isn't the best idea, but maybe by expanding upon it, evolving it, instead of shutting it down immediately, you might actually find that a version of that idea is the right one that you want to go with for the hackathon. Hackathon ideas, the best ones in my mind, come down to 3 simple rules. And the first one is the simplicity rule. You know you have a good idea when you can explain it to someone in simple terms. If the concept takes half an hour to explain, you will struggle to convince your team to participate. And when you come to present it to the judges, you may lose their attention before you get to the demo of your project. The second rule, and my favorite rule, is the relational rule. Keep the problem statement and idea related to you. Firstly, it helps your motivation through the event because you'll be more invested as the hackathon idea will hopefully solve a problem you have experienced. And secondly, a personal connection makes conveying a story about the idea's origin to the judges easier. The potential rule, the third rule, make sure you choose an idea that has the possibility of being something grander outside of the hackathon. Ideas found at hackathons can go on to be worth millions of dollars, but potential can be about more than just money. Perhaps your idea has the chance to help people or communities. Touching on money, though, there was a hackathon project, I think it was called Group Me, that happened at a TechCrunch hackathon a very long time ago. But they invented group text messaging before WhatsApp was a thing, before internet on phones was a thing. You'd send a message to one number and it would send out that message to all of your friends, and that kind of was a way to do group messaging. Skype bought GroupMe a year after that hackathon. Even though they didn't win, they bought them for something like $69 million or something like that. Crazy amounts of money. So really do think about what your hackathon project could become after the hack. And I'd also say, don't drop it as soon as the hackathon finishes. You can still do great things and continue on the project and share your development online. I really, really do encourage you to think long-term as well as short-term. And as you all know, the event that you're participating in is over more than just a day. So I figured I'd also just talk a couple of little ideas for surviving the night. Be conscious of your mood. Even a single night without sleep can lead to effects such as daytime tiredness and irritability. And being around you while you're irritable can be uncomfortable and challenging, especially if you've not made others aware of how you are feeling. If you are tired, voice it. That way others can try and be gentle with you. You're also unlikely to be the only one feeling that way, and others might be comforted in knowing that you are not the only one. Avoid the sugar rush. Consuming lots of sugar can get you buzzing, but a sugar low usually follows it. When you're tired and you add sugar low on top of it, there is no way you will survive the night without crashing hard. So reserve sugar for the final sprint. And hackathons are sometimes huge events. I think this one is remote, so it doesn't count as hard, but it's very important to drink water throughout the whole day. Don't forget, don't stay glued to your seat. Make sure you're hydrated, well fed, and feeling healthy. Don't ignore your body. Your body is telling you things for a reason. So you should aim to drink about 2 liters of water a day, and I stand by that. And that's all, folks. I just wanted to say that I'm going to be around when the hackathon's going on. So if you have questions or need any help, feel free to reach out to me on Discord. I can help with anything kind of front-end development-y, UX-y, branding, that kind of stuff. And also, if you just fancy taking a break and come saying hi, that's absolutely cool. So yeah, there's a couple of links if you're watching that you can click through there. You can get started with a few different things. My personal site has quite a few different projects on. So if you're interested in kind of getting some inspiration, you can go and have a look at some of my hackathon wins and get some ideas from there. But that's it from me. I'm happy to take absolutely any questions on anything you guys would find helpful or useful. Alexander, are there any questions in the chat?
So unfortunately, no one tuned in on Twitch, so there are no questions in the chat.
Okay,
really
no worries. No worries. All good. Okay. Well, in which case, we'll end it there. I hope you learned something.
You did.
Good stuff. Cool. All right. Great. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. You too, Sam.
All right. Bye.
Bye now.